Hey, you're listening to the C3 Network Podcast with Dan Holland. Our mission is to create a network of microchurches that are finding, teaching, and equipping people to be on mission. Our hope is that this encourages you. Be sure to leave us a review so you can help us share our message with more people who need to hear it. And now, Dan Holland.
So let me state the obvious. Most people don't ruin their lives overnight, all right? They drift, not toward obvious rebellion, but toward imbalance. Too much work, too little rest, too much control, too little grace, too rigid or too careless. And usually, we don't notice it happening because extremes often feel justified while we're living inside them. Welcome to Chasing the Wind. I'm Dan Holland, and we're walking through 10 rules from Solomon for catching what lasts. And rule number 7 is avoid extremes. And this may be one of the most surprising things Solomon ever wrote. I want you to listen carefully. It's Ecclesiastes 7, starting with verse 15. He said, "In this meaningless life of mine, I have seen both of these, the righteous perishing in their righteousness, and the wicked living long in their wickedness." Then he says, "Do not be over righteous, neither be over wise." Why destroy yourself? "Do not be over wicked, and do not be a fool. Why die before your time? It is good to grasp the one and not let go of the other. Whoever fears God will avoid all extremes." That almost sounds wrong. Don't be over righteous? What does that mean? Don't be over wise? See, Solomon isn't discouraging righteousness. He's warning against extremes that replace relationship with control. He had watched two dangerous spiritual ditches develop. One side said, if I follow every rule perfectly, nothing bad will ever happen to me. Well, that's legalism, trying to manage life without depending on God's grace. We just follow the rules. The other side said, grace, God's kindness, means I can live however I want. Well, that's careless. That's careless freedom. It's lawlessness, living without reverence for God. Solomon says both extremes miss the point. A life that fears God avoids extremes. You know, over the years, I've sat with people who have had tragic things happen, unspeakable tragedy. And in their grief, some have said something very heartbreaking. Maybe this happened because I stopped going to church. And each time I wondered, what if we taught people about God? Somewhere they got the idea that if they behaved well enough, a tragedy would never come. Even the apostles had this belief. Remember once when they saw a man who had been born blind, they asked Jesus, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind? And Jesus answered them, well, neither this man nor his parents sinned, but this has happened so that the works of God might be displayed in him. That's the extreme, as Solomon warns about. Faith is not a contract that protects us from suffering. It's actually a relationship that sustains us through suffering. I like when Paul wrote, so whether you eat or drink or whatever you do, do it all for the glory of God. Whatever you're doing. Notice the simplicity. It's not perfection. It's not performance. It's alignment. Because then he adds, do not cause anyone to stumble, for I am not seeking my own good, but the good of the many so that they may be saved. Balanced living is outward-focused living. We're constantly aware of how our behavior influences others, and that is maturity speaking. Extremes usually grow from self-focus. Jesus himself modeled this balance. Religious leaders accused him of being too strict. Others accused him of being too free. Yet, Jesus lived perfectly centered. I like in Matthew chapter 11 when he said, come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. That's balance. It's truth with grace. It's conviction with compassion. It's obedience with dependence. Jesus never lived at the extremes. He lived surrendered to the Father. And here's where this becomes very practical. Extremes aren't only spiritual. They show up everywhere in life. For example, all work, no family. All parenting, no marriage. All achievement, no rest. All responsibility, no joy. We justify the imbalance by calling it commitment, but I'm going to say something maybe hard to hear. Unchecked extremes quietly destroy what matters most. Have you ever noticed? You ever noticed that? I've had people tell me, well, I'm just focused, but they were actually just momentarily obsessed. And obsession isn't the same thing as focus. So what does rule number 7 look like practically? I think a few things. First, identify your leaning. Most of us don't struggle with both of those extremes. We drift toward one or the other, control or carelessness, overwork or avoidance of work. So ask honestly, where am I out of balance? Second, recenter around pleasing God. Let that be your dominant thought. Not expectations, not pressure, not comparison, but God. See, balance returns whenever God becomes the reference point again. So good. Number 3, adjust just one habit this week. Just leave work on time once. Initiate some rest and renewal. Just plan it. Offer grace where you would normally demand perfection. Something I learned from a Navy rescue diver is that we teach to the standard and we test to the objective. The objective is, did you save the guy who's drowning? Practice discipline where you've grown passive. Just do that. Make some small corrections. Prevent large collapses in your life by doing that. Now, here's Solomon's wisdom. Extremes promise certainty. A balance requires trust. See, legalism says, I control the outcomes, while carelessness says, nothing matters. Faith says, God leads, I follow. And the person who fears God learns to walk in that middle path. A foolish person hears this and they nod, but change nothing. A wise person makes adjustments because storms don't destroy balanced lives easily. No, because they bend, but they don't break. So this week, resist the pull toward extremes. Live surrendered, live grounded, live centered in Christ. Avoid extremes, not because moderation is fashionable, but because faithfulness is sustainable. And that's rule number 7. And it's another way we stop chasing the wind and start catching what lasts.
Thanks for tuning in. If you like this podcast, we post a new episode each week, so be sure to subscribe and leave us a review so you can help share our message. We'll see you next time.